Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
I'm having a lot of fun doing all of those things. And,
all right, as long as you're having fun.
That's right. With us today is our guest, Leah Gunn Barrett. She's the executive director of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. So you're not anti-gun, you're just pro-safety.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Our name says it all. We're not about taking away anyone's guns. We're just about making the gun and the user safer. Too many people are dying and being injured by guns in America. Over 33,000 Americans every year die from gun violence. And over 84...
Is that gun violence like shooting a robber coming in or a robber shooting somebody?
The gun violence figures, the fatality figures come from the Centers for Disease Control, and they're categorized as according whether it's a homicide, a suicide, an unintentional shooting. So those are really the three main categories.
And the 30,000 you're saying is from what category?
All three. Nearly 22,000 of the over 33,000 gun deaths are suicides in this country.
Really?
So you have about 11 to 12,000 homicides, and you have 1,000 or so unintentional shootings, or probably more. The problem with reporting gun deaths is there's no sort of uniform way of doing it. So, for example, unintentional shootings or accidental shootings, as they're called. The New York Times did a story back in 2013 showing they're vastly underreported, just because there's no consistent way to categorize how these deaths are recorded.
So why are you so misunderstood?
I don't think we are.
Well, with the car and auto industry, they want to make the car safer and better, but no one's shouting at them that they want to take away the car.
Yeah, well, it's because the corporate gun lobby, the NRA, see any kind of gun safety legislation as a threat to the existence of the gun manufacturers. And so they have taken this sort of slash and burn strategy really since 1977, where they will not tolerate any kind of legislation, not even research on gun violence, which has been not funded by the federal government for 20 years. The Centers for Disease Control were stripped of their funding from $2.4 million in 92 to 94 to $100,000 today. We spend $5 million a year on researching motor vehicle injury and death, and which is why, since the 1960s, Americans have been dying in much smaller numbers. It's gone down 90%, the death and injury rate from motor vehicles. In fact, now, gun deaths exceed motor vehicle deaths in 21 states. So you've seen gun deaths and injuries remain fairly flat and constant. In fact, they're actually increasing at the national level. Over the past 5 years, nationally, gun deaths have risen 6%. Here in New York, they've fallen 15% over that same period. So, people would be surprised to hear that New York has the 4th lowest gun death rate in the nation. And it's not rocket science. It's because we have relatively strong gun laws. I say relative to other states. We still have ways to go here in New York.
Yeah.
And a fairly low gun ownership rate, about 22.5% of New York households own guns, whereas the figure in a place like Alaska or Wyoming is 60%. And so that's why you have Alaska, Wyoming, Mississippi, those states with the highest gun death rates, because you have high gun ownership and you have a high rate of suicide.
Well, in Mississippi, I can understand that.
Well, the suicide, I'm just saying that, what can you do with suicide if they're not going to have a gun and if people
They'll hang themselves.
Yeah, I know, they're going to feel death. These people, I feel so bad for them.
Actually, the suicide prevention specialist, and we had a woman in Troy Saturday afternoon, Marcia Fazio, who's with the New York State Suicide Prevention Center, and she said means matter. So the means you select for suicide, and the Harvard School of Public Health has borne this out in their studies. If you use a gun to commit suicide, you succeed 85% of the time. If you use other means, the success rate plummets to 5%.
That's interesting. I wouldn't even think that.
Well, you think about it.
Bring that up.
Yeah, she brought up the case of the young man who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And she asked us in the room if we'd heard his name. I can't even remember now what it was. It was just on Saturday. But as he jumped off, he thought, I don't want to be doing this. And he had 4 seconds as he was falling to the river or the ocean below to really think how he was going to get out of this. It was fortunate that he survived. He smashed some vertebrae. He smashed some vertebrae, and but he lived to tell the tale. And that's the thing about suicide. It's often an impulsive
Well,
action.
I think the folks who are proponents and opponents of assisted suicide, and they have this pill that you could keep on your end table, and if you just feel that peace, that moment of depression, and you just take that pill, it's irreversible. You know, and most of the time, suicide, we saw this with Robin Williams and other actors, high-profile people, that when they want to kill themselves, there's no stopping them.
No, I would disagree with that because, for example, New York City is the largest city in this country, right? We have the lowest.
I didn't know about LA or not.
No,
Okay,
we're bigger
okay.
than LA.
Okay.
We have the lowest suicide rate of any major American city.
Really?
And that's because we don't have as many firearms in the home, in the people's possession.
Is it, or is it that it's a more fun and
Look,
uplifting
it's
city?
it's not, well, I mean, that could be something
As
there
opposed
too.
to Mississippi where there's Biloxi and there's not much else going
But
on.
don't take my word for it. I mean, look, these studies come from public health professionals across the country. And the statistics don't lie. I mean, the fact that we have this many gun deaths and why Wyoming and Alaska and these states with high gun ownership rates have the highest gun death rates. It's not so much the homicide, but it might be domestic violence homicide.
Right.
It's suicide. It's a kid shooting another kid. It's unintentional shooting. It's far higher. So in other words, the bottom line is having a gun in your home does not make you safer. It does not. But the NRA has been telling us that for years. You know why? Because they want to sell guns.
Okay, so let me ask you to clarify, because I started off saying that you're misunderstood and you said, no, you're not. So let me just ask you to clarify that women are too weak to carry guns for self-defense. Did you ever say that?
I did not say that.
Or intimate that?
I did not. I was appearing with Al Jazeera.
This is why I'm asking you. Okay.
It's completely taken, twisted.
Right.
What I said was a woman who's a state legislator in Florida was arguing that we should arm college students, women, to fend off would-be rapist attackers.
That's
and she
Ray,
cites
Ray Winkle Vasalinda?
Vasalinda, right. Michelle Ray Winkle, that's why I couldn't remember her name, strange name.
If I didn't have it written, I wouldn't know.
Exactly.
Okay.
So her story is that when she was in college, she lived off campus. She didn't even live on campus. A guy tried to rape her, whom she knew. This is often the case. There's someone you know. She had a gun. She waved the gun around. He didn't rape her. That's end of story. Now she's trying to bring guns onto college campuses in Florida when her incident didn't even occur on college campuses. In fact, college campuses in Florida, in fact, across the country, are some of the safest places to be.
Why?
Well, they are because you can't bring guns on campus. At least you couldn't, but now 9 states allow them. Think about it. You have campus security. My daughter goes to college in Massachusetts. They have, they're looked after. It's tranquil. It's an environment for learning. And so bringing guns into an environment where you have lots of young people, hormones, stress, depression, alcohol, sex. I mean, that's toxic. To add firearms into that mix. And the funny thing about it is law enforcement is very much against bringing guns onto campus. So what I actually said, getting back to that quote, is I said, if you think by arming women in campuses, you're going to be stopping sexual assaults. That's not right. Most sexual assaults occur between young people who know each other. There's usually alcohol involved. And if you are both slightly drunk and then the boy makes a move on you, what are you going to pull out your gun and kill him? I mean, if you pull out a gun, that means you intend to use it and take a human life. And I just don't see that as being a very good solution to anything.
And they often say, if you're going to take out a gun, make sure you're going to use it to kill and not to maim or to injure.
Exactly. And also it can be wrested away. Look, women physically are not as strong as men, right? I mean, some are, but very few. And so typically it will be turned against you, used against you, and it has been. There are many instances where this has happened.
And I think of Billie Jean King against Bobby Riggs, the tennis thing,
Right, I remember that match too.
Okay.
I remember that. Yeah, the 1970s. It was a great spectacle, wasn't it?
There are people who would say women are stronger than some men, so
yeah. But I'm talking about physical strength.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just okay.
Yeah.
So what would be your solution then? What are you advocating to?
What we want to do is we want to bring down the number of gun deaths and injuries in the United States. So we know what we need to do. If you look at the laws that New York has, for example, background checks on all gun sales to make sure the gun is not being sold to someone who shouldn't have it. someone who's a violent felon, a domestic abuser, seriously mentally ill, a child. It's keeping guns out of the wrong hands is basically what we want to try to achieve. And we've done that with certainly other products. We regulate other products. Guns are the only consumer product not regulated by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. We regulate
But toy guns are.
toy guns. Teddy bears are regulated.
Right.
Thousands and thousands of products are. And guns are not, because Congress, again, did the bidding of the National Rifle Association and exempted them and said they cannot be regulated for health and safety. So gun manufacturers don't have to put safety features, safety devices on guns. They don't have to make smart guns. We have smartphones, so why not a smart gun? They can only be fired by its owner.
And what would a smart gun do?
Did you see the latest James Bond film? I didn't, but I heard about him using an RFID, I think it was, which is radio frequency identification gun, where you have a watch or a ring that you have in close proximity to the gun, and that it operates only when it's in your hands, right? And if someone else takes it, they can't fire it because it's not anywhere near your bling, right? Or you can have a biometric, which opens like our phones.
And I heard you mention that at a seminar you were part of, so a panel. So tell me what biometric. I mean, that just totally went over my head.
Well, look,
So-
your Apple phone.
Yeah.
I can open this by putting my phone or my thumbprint here.
Yeah.
So same thing. You would
Because they
have
know your thumbprint.
right. So it's personalized through your biometrics, either your the iris
Yeah,
scan or your
right.
thumbprint or whatever
Okay.
it might be. The police don't tend to like biometric smart guns or biometric anything because their hands get sweaty, bloody, dirty, right? That's the nature
Yeah.
of their job. So they prefer an RFID, radio frequency identification kind of smart gun. But the NRA, which represents the corporate gun lobby, make no mistake, they're an
Yeah.
industry organization. They've opposed any kind of innovation to make smart guns, to make them available on the U.S. market. There was a German firm called Armatix a couple of years ago that tried to sell its smart gun with a watch, so it was RFID, in Maryland and in California. The NRA and the gun lobby hounded them out of the country, and the dealers had to close down. The dealer in Maryland had a threat made on his life. That's how vitriolic they are.
I wanted to ask you your personal story of how you got involved, and I have a personal story I wanted to relate also.
Okay.
But I want you to go
Sure,
first. So.
sure. I was living in London, the UK, and I had been since 1985 with my family. In 1997, I got a phone call from one of my brothers. I grew up in a family of 4 brothers. I'm the only girl. And my brother said, Greg, our oldest brother, I'm second oldest, has been shot, and he's brain dead. Can you come?
In London? I mean,
No,
where
in
was he?
Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm living in London. My family's back in the States. And I couldn't comprehend that he'd been shot, so I got on the next flight out from Heathrow, flew to Tulsa, went to the hospital, held his hand, said my goodbyes. And he was 40 years old, had a 13-year-old son, 15-year-old daughter, his wife, Janine, and they turned off the life support. And
Well, how did the gun?
it was
a
a
robbery,
it
you
was
mean?
it was a bungled robbery at his business. Yeah, he had a gun at his business, but he wasn't able to use it, and they shot him right through the head.
Before he could go for the gun. And that's
What a waste, what a waste.
How are his children holding up?
Well, my niece is 34. She's beautiful and doing well. She lives in Denver now. My nephew, who's 33, married a year and a half ago. They had a baby girl in October. Georgiana, lovely little girl. My father will never, my brother will, never be a grandfather. She'll never know her grandfather. But it's such a waste, such a loss. And
But they're coping, I mean...
yeah, it scarred them. I mean, Bryant, my nephew, was 13, and he and his dad, Greg, were really close. They played basketball together. They just
Well, that's
did
an
everything
impressionable
together.
age. I mean,
Of course it is.
13 in Jewish, you get a bar mitzvah and you become a man and,
Yeah.
but this is
Terrible
not the way
time.
to do this, so
It is
it's
not. And there are too many stories like that out there. And I really don't care, if it was an illegal gun, a legal gun, an unintentional shooting, a suicide. A life was taken when it shouldn't have been.
The opposite story is like that if you're dealing with a robber. Just like when Mark and I have so many government officials and policemen on and DAs, and they can't stop heroin. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So, that's the answer. Even if you would forbid every American citizen can't have a gun, we'll put you in jail. I mean, the worst thing, the criminals are just going to, some way or another, have guns. So Like in your
But
scenario.
why
with
make
your
it easy?
brother.
Why make it easy for them?
Right, you mean you lock
Why
the door of your house?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know,
Even-
and they're
and
gonna get in anyway.
gun dealers should make sure they're not selling to straw purchasers. You know, interesting data from the ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. In 2013 and 2014, New York was audited by the ATF. Licensed dealers in the state of New York, we have nearly 2,000.
Yeah.
And in 2013, they reported over 3,000 guns lost or stolen from dealers. And in 2014, they were also audited. They reported over 4,000 lost and stolen
Well,
guns.
so you
In
think that's something.
in 2015, they were not audited, and they reported 300.
So they're-
Well,
I was talking to the,
Because they were already all stolen. They didn't have any left to steal.
what it says, because in 2015, Arkansas was audited, and guess what? Their numbers went up.
There you
So
go.
if they know that someone's looking.
Another good southern state. Okay.
But this is New York. This is New
Yes.
York State.
I have
It's
to-
shocking.
I have to tell you something.
Just to conclude, just
Yeah.
that the guns are being sold under the table, that's what you're
Or,
trying to imply.
or if they're being stolen,
You're not that careless with valuable inventory that you would lose
Yeah, I know.
3,000 or
You don't
4,000 guns.
in the city of Albany, they have what's called community guns in Arbor Hill and
Yes.
South End.
You have them in New York City too, yeah, where they put, like, remember that there was a case in Albany, I think in the summer of 2013, I
Yeah.
seem to recall, a child, 9-year-old, finding a gun in a flower pot, which is where they stashed the community gun, shot himself in the hand. It could have been much worse.
Right.
Like that.
They put them under staircases. They put them in
And
weeds.
they switch it, they change it around,
Right.
and everyone who needs it knows where it is, and so it's hard for law enforcement, sure.
But we do have community guns out there. And
do?
the source could be from the gun shops.
Yeah,
You know,
it
or
could
it could
be.
be that they stole the gun from home breaking.
Or-
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting is, I know you had Chief Cox on earlier. The Albany Police Department showed us their lost and stolen data for the city of Albany, people who've actually reported their guns lost or stolen. And over a 5-year period, nearly 100 guns were reported
So
lost
they're
and
in the
stolen.
street, you mean?
They go right to the street.
How many guns are there in the United States registered?
No
at
one
least?
really knows.
What-
I mean, not
why?
all guns have to be registered. That's the other thing.
Really?
New York State has registration for handguns. New Jersey has registration and licensing for long guns and handguns.
Right.
But very
Rifles-
few states do.
Rifles you could buy over the counter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know an Israeli a person that comes now, he's an American, but he just couldn't believe because in Israel, even though it's so militaristic and there's so many guys going to the army, but the private citizens are really very strict of having guns.
They are.
And he says, well, they sell them at the Walmart, they're a rifle over there. You know, it's
Yeah,
just like,
most
pick
of the
'em
rest
up
of the
over there.
world looks at us like we're absolutely nuts, which we are when it comes to guns. We are nuts. Israel's a perfect example. You know, when they figured out that the Israeli soldiers were coming on weekends with their AR-15s, and their suicides were really high. So the military leadership said, well, hang on, there's something going on here. So they said you can no longer bring your weapon home on weekends. Guess what? Suicide rates plummeted.
Well, it's so interesting. I never would think that because the guns, it's interesting, a very interesting statistic.
I just want to convey my story about
Yes,
what
please.
happened.
Yeah.
My father had a business associate who lived up in Orange County in the Warwick area, and he had like half a mountain up there that he owned. And this goes back into the 70s, and I must have been 12 or 13, and he had a son who was about my age, and we went up and we played, and my father and my brother were out there, you know, shooting at cans or
Right.
With real
bullseyes,
guns?
or with real
Should not
guns,
be with
rifles,
guns,
rifles. And we were up playing on a tractor, and we were, you know, going up the hills and, you know, having a great time with the kid who was my age. And, you know, it's something that was very impressionable, and I really thought maybe I'd have a friend and just have more contact, you know. And 2 weeks after we got home, you know, 2 weeks later, we get a phone call that his father was cleaning his rifle and didn't check the chamber. And the son happened to get up to get a slice of bread, and the gun went off, and they're in the rural part of town, and Middletown is the closest hospital. By the time they got there, the kid wasn't alive anymore.
Oh, that's
So,
tragic, yeah.
you know, and that was a big loss for me. I can't believe,
I'm
you know,
sorry. Yeah, you don't forget things like that, do you?
No, you don't. And it's not, I mean, it tore the family apart.
Yeah.
I mean,
Gun violence does
they-
tear families
it-
apart.
Well, that's why I asked you about your family, but, you know, this family, happened to be it was revealed to me later they were gun runners for the mob.
Really?
And they had this huge arsenal.
my
Well, one of the
goodness.
sons just threw all the rifles in the river, and he went into the army, and another, one of the daughters became a nurse, and the parents got divorced, and the father died at a young age, and it was all because of the
It's
stress of
tragedy.
the heart and all this stuff.
They talk about the ripple effect of gun violence, and you put your finger on it. It's exactly that. The Nomkin family, whose son Nicholas was killed in 2010 when he went on a play date to a friend's house. A friend found his father's gun and unintentionally shot Nicholas. 2 weeks after that, Oksana, Nicholas's grandfather, was crossing a road. He was an elderly gentleman, concert pianist. They were immigrants from Russia. To visit Nicholas's grave, and he's hit by a car.
And died?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Wow.
So that was, and that's
That
because
was
he
not
was
reported.
disoriented. Well, I think
But-
it was. Yeah, his name was, I think it was Yuri Mostin.
But it's interesting that, you know, you got guns and cars who killed the most number of people, and it took 2 lives in that family.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with Elizabeth Holtzman, the former congresswoman and
Oh,
former
yes.
New York City comptroller?
Yes.
What, you
We
are
wrote,
friends, or?
yeah, I mean, we're acquaintances. We wrote a piece for the Huffington Post on, you know, people are frustrated that Congress is not passing legislation. So what is it we can do? Can we be creative about how we reduce gun violence? And this, we think that government, both at the city, state, and certainly federal level, have a role to play. New York City, New York State buy a lot of firearms.
Yeah.
And so as part of their contracts, they should write into the contract that the suppliers, the gun manufacturers who supply the guns, incorporate certain safety features or ensure that they are only providing their guns to dealers who are operating with, in accordance with federal law, because we know some of them are not. In other words, impose some kind of criteria and standards of behavior on the people you do business with, because you have that leverage as a major buyer. So it's using purchasing power.
Do you personally feel threatened being in the high-profile position that you are, and you have the NRA targeting you or aiming their...
No, I don't.
You
Not at all.
don't?
No. Why should I? I mean, we're talking.
I don't know. These are the guys with the guns, and you're against the gun violence. And,
Well, I think
mean,
all
and,
Americans should
you
be
know, you
against
just
gun
gotta-
violence. I think
and-
all Americans should be against gun violence. And no, I don't feel at all. And
Okay, I just had to ask.
yeah,
You know,
no.
I see all these articles, and I felt for you.
Well, no, I mean, look, if you work in this area, you have to have, you know, a thick skin. I've been working in this area for almost 20 years. I believe that what we're trying to do by saving lives is the right thing to do.
Is it true in London that they don't carry guns? They have billy clubs, or do they
The
carry
police,
guns now?
yeah, the police outside of London do not carry firearms. That's right, they do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always found that funny. There was this article that was written early last year that says there's no such thing as a law-abiding gun owner.
Again, that was, well, I remember that, and that was NYU, Scott Bach, who's a national
Right.
NRA board member.
Right.
I did not say that. I said before, everyone's a law-abiding gun owner until that incident, right? Until the guy who lost it at Umpqua Community College in Oregon killed all those people. Until that couple in San Bernardino shot the community center full of people.
Right.
Until, so
You
you
know,
see.
Ralph Tortorici shooting up SUNY Albany
Exactly. I mean,
lecture
look,
center.
it's about keeping guns out of dangerous hands. People who have anger issues
But why would he-
probably should not have a firearm.
But why would he write that and then
Because
name you in
this is
it
what they
and-
do. This is what they do. They take anything you say and twist it, take it out of context, and they also twist it. And that I did not actually say they're not law-abiding gun owners. I said before someone becomes not law-abiding, they were law-abiding. So when you're not born, a criminal, right? You're not born a criminal. Just like guns are not manufactured to be illegal. They all start legal. We all start out with a clean slate, right? At some point, something happens. Whether it's you get angry, you shoot your wife, which happens, and then your kids, murder, suicides, or just domestic violence. Or you get angry, you get drunk, and you shoot your friend in an argument, which happens more than you might imagine. Then technically you're a criminal, right? So this is what the NRA loves to do. They like to say it's the criminals we should be afraid of. They love to stoke fear. Fear sells guns. Why are they so keen on selling guns? In the 1970s, when I was growing up in Kansas, over half of American households owned guns. Now, It's down to 32%.
But why is
Their
it-
market is declining because of demographics. The white male demographic is declining in
But
this
why
country.
are you being targeted by them? There are other people
Because
who
they're
are
afraid.
speaking out
Because
against
they're
gun
afraid.
violence.
Because I'm a woman. Because I don't think I'm being targeted over other people. I don't think I am.
Okay.
But I just, on what you just said, just wanted, because you say, what do I mean, the more the Mexicans or the Hispanic or the black people don't own guns?
They don't. They don't.
I just,
They don't like them as much as the older white males. Let's face it. That's the
I don't
chief
know.
gun
That's
buying.
what I'm
No,
asking.
it's true. They're the chief gun buying demographic. Women, by and large, are not, crazy about guns. The millennials are not. The Latinos, Hispanics, the black community, no. So it's that older, and those are the people. Look, there's an element of race to all of this as well. Let's not ignore that. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for African American youth. A young African American male, up until the age of 34, has a huge chance of dying from gun violence. It's way beyond what a white male would. So there is an element of racism here, and so these guns are being trafficked into poor communities, which happen to sometimes be heavily black or Hispanic, and they're trafficked in from out of state, usually from southern states with weak gun laws, and they're done for money. People are bringing them to these communities and flooding the communities, and New York is suffering from this, with guns that are technically illegal, and they fall into the wrong hands, and it's like they're not growing on trees. One woman up in Buffalo said to me, she lives in the city of Buffalo, and she's lost people to gun violence. She said, we're not making these guns. The black community, the Hispanic community, we're not manufacturing these guns. Where are they coming from? She said, I think it's a conspiracy. That was what she said. And you have to kind of wonder, and when you have people like Ted Nugent, who's the NRA Board of Directors, he said years ago about the inner city urban violence, and black on black violence, sometimes it's called. He said, good, they're killing themselves off. Now that kind of disgusting overt racism, when it comes to this issue, I think is just appalling and should be called out. But the NRA still has him on the board of directors. He made some terribly anti-Semitic. Did you see all the Jewish gun violence prevention leaders they had saying that it was a Jewish plot? I mean, these people are crazy, but they like to stoke fear, and it's all because of the almighty dollar. They want to sell guns, and the NRA opposes background checks. Why? Because they are dependent on gun sales, illegal gun sales to the illegal market. They need that money, that revenue.
All right, so I need to bring this home to Rabbi Simon because he has a son who lives in Dayton, Ohio. And in Dayton in 2015, in fact, it was maybe 6 months ago, there was a woman who shot someone and killed a home invader. And she had a gun, and do you know that story? I'm sure you know.
Oh, I mean, because they're so few and far between. The NRA jumps on those, but there are very few of those. Did you know that you're far, far more likely if you have a gun in the home to use it in a suicide, homicide, unintentional shooting than you are to use it for self-defense? That's the data. Those are the statistics.
Yeah, but I just because he has a son there, I just wanted to bring up the Dayton thing and see if...
he's a rabbi, he's not a policeman over
He's a rabbi, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, I have an alarm system. A gun would not make me feel safer, far from it.
And have you ever chatted with Kirsten Gillibrand? Because I think she sleeps with
absolutely.
a gun under her bed. So.
No, she doesn't.
Didn't she say that, though?
No, no, she doesn't.
That wasn't her who said it?
I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, maybe she said it one time, but she doesn't now. She's got young children, and she's sponsoring an anti-gun trafficking bill in the Senate. She's very much, she has an F rating from the National Rifle Association. I'd be very surprised if she does.
Okay.
She's too intelligent and too responsible as a parent to do something like that.
I have to find the quote for you, but she
Okay.
said that when she was living in Columbia County. Okay.
Maybe she said it for political reasons, because she was a congresswoman representing a conservative district. Now she's a New York State senator. She has to represent the whole state.
Okay. Young New Yorkers against gun violence. Is there something special about, youngsters connected with gun violence?
Well, we work with young people in New York City. We have a program that's offered in each of the 5 boroughs. We're in 7 high schools where, in fact, we're bringing young people to Albany on May 3rd for our annual lobby day for them to come to meet with their legislators, talk about how gun violence has impacted their lives and their communities. And we're teaching them how to become advocates, how to speak out, and how to make their communities safer. Because, these kids, a lot of them who are picking up guns are doing it because they feel powerless. And we're telling them that you don't have to feel powerless. You realize your power from within. You have power as an individual to speak out, to get educated, to learn about the issue, and then to do something about it. So, and everyone has that power, so that's what we're trying to do. That's why the education piece is so important.
Well, thank
All right,
you.
Leah, very good. You're doing good work over here. If more people would obviously not get hurt by guns, then that's
That's
a
a
big
good thing.
mitzvah. You say it's
That's
a big good deed. That what you're doing. So thank you
Tikkun
for
Olam.
good word and keep on progressing with
Thank
what
you
you're
for
doing.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
joining
much.
us.
My pleasure. Okay, we have to